Your ticket? I never booked anything like that. Samantha said it casually with a light laugh as she dragged a brand name suitcase out from the back of the closet. Her voice was light, as if she were talking about the weather, filled with a kind of innocent cheerfulness that didn't contain even a trace of malice. But those words were like a sharp blade piercing straight into my chest. What do you mean? I barely managed to squeeze out my voice, still clutching the floral summer dress in my hands. That dress was supposed to be worn under the Hawaiian sun. For this trip, I had adjusted my work schedule weeks in advance and finally secured a week-long vacation. It was the departure day for our family's Hawaii trip, celebrating my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The person who had first suggested this trip was none other than my sister Samantha. Why don't we give Mom and Dad the best anniversary ever? Let's plan a family trip to Hawaii. When she made that sparkling proposal, I felt a warm glow spread through my chest for a moment, but reality quickly pulled me back. That sounds wonderful, but I have to take care of Grandma. I can't just leave the house for so long. Samantha slapped her chest proudly as if she had been waiting for this moment. Of course I've thought of that. I'll find and arrange a top-rated caregiver service myself. You just focus on the trip, okay? I was happy she was willing to go that far. Her unexpected thoughtfulness, so unlike her usual selfishness, moved me just a little. And after all, this was our parents' special day. I didn't want to ruin the atmosphere by being the only one not going. All right, I'll leave it to you then. When I said that, Samantha threw her arms around me with a beaming smile. But what followed was, as always, the same old story. We'll split the travel expenses, okay? Barely moments after saying that, Samantha came to me in tears. I'm sorry, I just can't come up with that kind of money as a student. But I don't want to give up on the present. Once I get a job, I'll pay you back double with my bonus. I promise, I swear. Please cover me just this once. The moment I heard those words, the small spark of excitement I had for the trip faded away rapidly. Here we go again. In that case, let's call this trip off for now. When I calmly said that, my father and mother, who had been watching TV on the living room sofa, immediately joined the conversation. Hey, Lily, what are you talking about? Samantha is still a student. You work from home and make a decent living, so you can handle it, can't you? My father said. That's right, Lily. This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. If you cover the expenses, everything will be solved, my mother added. To them, my income was considered shared family property. The option for me to say no never existed in the first place. Their eyes were filled with a mix of expectations and pressure, all directed at me from every angle. For a brief moment, I felt the urge to throw everything away and lock myself in my room. But the truth was, this was an opportunity to give back to my parents. Maybe, just maybe, this trip could help mend the strained relationship we had as a family. That faint hope weakened my resolve. I took a deep breath and turned to face them. All right, I'll cover everything, but this is only because it's for your anniversary. Then I looked Samantha straight in the eyes and made sure to remind her. You must pay me back once you get a job. That promise is absolute. Yeah, thank you, she said, throwing her arms around me with a bright smile. I let out a deep sigh but still took her hands. You'd better keep that promise. With that reminder, I ended up agreeing to cover all the expenses. After I completed all the reservations and received the e-ticket confirmation from the airline by email, the next few weeks passed peacefully. During breaks from work, I slowly packed my luggage, and I even felt a tiny spark of excitement about the upcoming vacation in Hawaii. Then came the day before our departure. It was just yesterday. I received a notification from the airline that online check-in had opened. As I opened my laptop to begin the procedure, my father called out to me from the living room. Lily, I'll handle the check-in. You're busy with work, and I'll make sure to pick seats next to your mother. It was such a natural offer. And it was the only part of the trip that my father had volunteered to take care of himself. Feeling a bit surprised, I said, All right then, I'll leave it to you. Here's the reservation number, and read the number displayed on my smartphone aloud to my father. He started fiddling with his tablet, and a few minutes later, he looked satisfied and said to me, Okay, all done. I've saved the boarding passes for all 4 of us, your mom, Samantha, you, and me, on my phone. We'll get through the airport smoothly tomorrow. Thanks, that's a big help, I replied without the slightest hint of suspicion. I had no idea that during the check-in process, my father had quietly unchecked only my name from the passenger list and completed the procedure for just the 3 of them. The airline system allows partial check-in for a single reservation. My booking was left in an unchecked-in state, automatically interpreted as if I had no intention of boarding. It was a cunning trap, one that wouldn't come to light until the airport counter. And then on the morning of our departure, as I finished packing, Samantha dropped a shocking truth on me. My ticket doesn't exist? Well, someone has to take care of Grandma, right? Samantha said, continuing her packing without missing a beat. What do you mean? You were supposed to arrange a caregiver, I asked. She burst into amused laughter. Arrange one? Of course not. The best caregiver in the world is right here in this house. Obviously, I mean you. Next to her, my mother casually pulled my expensive sunscreen out of my makeup pouch and slipped it into her own luggage. My father sat in the living room flipping through a golf magazine, pretending as if he couldn't hear any of our conversation. This was my family. You're always with Grandma, and you're happy that way, right? We'll be thinking of you while we enjoy the Hawaiian sunshine. Samantha's words were the final trigger. Something inside me quietly, completely, and irreversibly snapped. The front door closed with a heavy, echoing thud. Their cheerful laughter and the sound of suitcase wheels rolling along the asphalt faded into the distance, until the house was enveloped in an almost unnatural silence. I stood there motionless, not even noticing that the summer dress in my hands had been crumpled beyond recognition. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger either. What filled my heart was a bottomless emptiness, and from its depths, a firm, unshakable resolve began to rise. When did things start to turn out this way? For the past several years, my life has been devoted to taking care of my grandmother, Chloe Anderson. Her dementia had been steadily progressing, her memories fading day by day, until sometimes she didn't even recognize who I was. Helping her eat, bathing her, changing her clothes, accompanying her to the hospital. Every responsibility was pushed onto me by the rest of the family. Lily works from home, so she has plenty of free time, right? Samantha is still a student. This is an important time for her. As a man, I wouldn't even know where to start. Those were their constant excuses. No one ever stopped to consider that I might have my own dreams or goals in life. They all simply believed that it was my natural duty to sacrifice myself for this household. And yet, to me, my grandmother was never a burden. Just as she had once opened up the world for me, I wanted to make her fading world as colorful as I possibly could. It wasn't an obligation. It was my pride, and it was pure love. The grandmother I remembered was always intelligent, dignified, and like a magician who expanded my horizons. No matter how exhausted my body became, my heart never saw her presence as a weight to bear. Leaving behind the silence of the living room, I strode down the hallway of the house. At the very end stood the door to my study. This was my battlefield and my fortress. Without my family ever knowing, I had built a massive fortune during my teenage years, using the knowledge I had inherited from my grandmother. Upon graduating from college, I established my own company. The unique AI-powered analytical model I developed sent shockwaves through the industry. The company I founded, Starlight Capital, had grown into a force that even Wall Street could no longer ignore. Back when I was still in high school, after I won an award at a school mathematics contest, my grandmother showed me an old financial newspaper. She told me that, when she was young, she had dreamed of working on Wall Street. But the era she lived in didn't allow that. She got married, devoted herself to her family, and buried that ambitious dream deep within her heart. I couldn't achieve it. But you have the talent. That gift of yours, the ability to read numbers, will become a weapon that moves the world. My grandmother passed down every bit of knowledge she possessed to me. She taught me how to read market movements, evaluate a company's true worth, and, most importantly, understand the human psychology hidden behind the numbers. To me, it was the most fascinating game in the world. Just as she had taught me, the small investments I made using my allowance began to grow exponentially, like a snowball rolling down a hill. After her condition worsened, that knowledge of investing became the foundation that supported my entire life. Because I had a source of income that my family didn't know about, I never hesitated to purchase expensive nursing supplies, prepare nutritious meals for her, or quietly cover household expenses when needed. My family knew that I earned slightly more than they imagined through my so-called remote work. They probably assumed I was just a fairly skilled freelance day trader or something similar. That's exactly why they treated me as a convenient resource, someone they could use without a second thought. No words of gratitude, no words of appreciation, nothing. If that were all, I could have endured it. But what I needed, was the bare minimum of human respect. And they didn't even grant me that. So be it. My days of sacrificing myself for this family end here. By now, the plane carrying my family is probably flying somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. They're likely enjoying their flight to paradise, blissfully unaware that their paradise is about to become the gateway to hell. I opened the airline's booking management page. There they were, the seats for my father, my mother, and Samantha, each glowing with a bright green, confirmed status. Their return flight. 1 week from now, the flight they would board after spending a luxurious week in paradise, full of satisfaction and good memories. I moved my cursor over the cancel button next to the reservation number and clicked it quietly. Are you sure you want to cancel? A 100% cancellation fee will apply. A warning pop-up appeared, but my resolve didn't waver in the slightest. Yes, of course. The moment I clicked, the green lights instantly turned to red canceled notices. Cancellation fees? That's fine. The money I spent vanishing into thin air is nothing compared to the despair they're about to experience. Next came the hotel reservations. The presidential suite on the top floor of a luxury hotel towering right in front of Waikiki Beach. Samantha had once exclaimed, "Just once in my life, I want to stay in a room like this." It was because of her excited pleading that I went out of my way to arrange it. I accessed the hotel's reservation system and proceeded to cancel the booking in the same calm, methodical manner. The cancellation fee was, of course, 100%. But that didn't matter. What I would lose was merely money. What my family would lose was the extravagant experience itself. Finally, there were the restaurant reservations. For my parents' anniversary dinner, I had booked a table at a world-renowned French restaurant, famous for being fully booked up to a year in advance. It was a reservation I had only secured by fully leveraging Starlight Capital's corporate membership connections. I composed a short, clear email to the restaurant's maitre d' and pressed send. With that, all arrangements were undone. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled deeply. Outside the window, morning light had already flooded the world. There were only a few more hours until my family would land in Hawaii. When they arrived in that paradise, nothing would be waiting for them. Nothing except the cold, unshakable reality I had prepared. I stood up slowly and left the study, heading toward the kitchen. I ground the finest coffee beans and poured the water carefully, drip by drip. A rich aroma filled the room. It was a quiet, flawless morning, a perfect way to celebrate the beginning of my new life. After that, I returned to my usual routine. I entered my grandmother's room and opened the curtains, letting in the gentle morning sunlight. "Good morning, Grandma." I greeted her, helped her change, and assisted her with breakfast, her favorite oatmeal. Throughout it all, my heart was astonishingly calm. It was almost hard to believe that only a few hours earlier, I had planted a massive bomb in the lives of my family on their way to Hawaii. Later in the morning, I played her favorite classical music and chatted casually with her. Of course, she hardly responded, but the peaceful expressions she showed every now and then warmed my heart. After lunch, once she had taken her medicine and drifted off to her afternoon nap, I quietly stepped out of the room. This peaceful moment, this was what I had always wanted to protect above all else. And then, I opened the door to my study once more. Bathed in the cool blue glow of the wall-to-wall monitors, I sank deep into my chair. My mind switched over completely, into the mode of Lily of Starlight Capital. As I scanned the movements of the New York markets, the screen of my smartphone suddenly lit up and vibrated intensely. An international call from a blocked number. Seeing those words flash on the display, I quietly lifted the corners of my mouth. Right on schedule. I put the call on speaker and pressed the answer button. My father's furious voice roared through the room, sharp enough to pierce my ears. "Lily, what the hell is going on here? The hotel reservation's been canceled." In the background, I could hear my mother sobbing and Samantha shouting, "This is unbelievable." "Oh, Dad, you've already arrived at the hotel? That's strange. I made the reservations perfectly. Could there have been some kind of mistake?" I replied in the purest tone of feigned innocence. "Don't play dumb. The hotel's general manager said you're the one who canceled it. And what's this about you being one of the hotel's owners? What kind of sick joke is this?" "Joke?" I stopped typing, leaned back in my chair, and smiled faintly. "No, it's not a joke. It's the truth. Starlight Capital, the company I run as CEO, is a major shareholder in that hotel chain. We invest all over the world. Oh, and by the way, the golf tournaments you watch every weekend? I sponsor those. I'm surprised you never noticed. A sharp gasp came from my father on the other end of the line. My instructions carry absolute authority. The suite you were supposed to stay in is, at this very moment, being used by far more deserving guests. Another stunned silence from him followed. Oh, and just so you know, I added smoothly, your return flight tickets have, of course, been canceled as well. I also sent a polite message to the restaurant to cancel your anniversary dinner reservation. What? Then we'll just find another hotel. I'll use the card. Oh, those cards. I cut him off mid-sentence. I've already frozen all the family credit cards for suspicious activity. At this point, what you're holding is nothing more than a piece of plastic. On the other end of the line, there was a brief dead silence. Then, finally, I heard Samantha's trembling voice. Lily, you're awful. What are we supposed to do now? That's a good question. What are you going to do? I spoke coolly, gazing up at the clear blue sky outside my window. Why don't you try buying some economy class tickets with your own money? Oh, wait, my apologies. You don't have any left, do you? I suppose that's only natural, considering you were perfectly willing to skip out on repaying the hundreds of thousands of dollars I fronted for this trip. Lily, please, help us. My father's voice cracked pitifully, his pride shattered into pieces. Help you? Who exactly? The people who abandoned me at home and tried to run off to paradise on my money? I was the one who took care of Grandma all by myself. And when I was struggling, did any of you ever help me? Not once. All I ever heard was, Lily works from home and makes easy money, so it's only natural. That was your favorite line, wasn't it? Well, let's see how you managed to get home using only your own strength. With that, I pressed the end call button. Silence returned to the study, broken only by the soft hum of my monitors. That beautiful Hawaiian sky must have looked like the color of despair through their eyes. Serves you right, I whispered quietly in my heart. Meanwhile, as my family stood on the brink of hopelessness in Hawaii, I sat peacefully in my quiet living room next to my grandmother, who had just woken from her nap. The gentle afternoon sunlight streaming through the window illuminated her silver hair softly. As always, I brewed a pot of warm herbal tea and knelt beside her wheelchair. Grandma, it's tea time. I made chamomile today. Normally, she would only stare at me with vacant eyes, maybe nod faintly, or sometimes not react at all. But today was different. She slowly reached out, took my hand, and looked straight into my eyes with her clear blue gaze. That look wasn't the gaze of the grandmother suffering from dementia. It was the intelligent, strong, inspiring woman who had once taught me her philosophy of investing. Then, in a calm but unmistakably clear voice, she said, Lily, it's enough now. You've done more than enough. From this moment on, live your life for yourself. This house, it's no longer where we belong. I gasped. For a moment, I couldn't speak. How many years had it been since I'd heard her speak so fluently? Sensing my shock, she squeezed my hand gently and smiled. Surprised? I'm sorry, I've ended up deceiving you all this time. She began to speak slowly, telling me everything. It was true that several years ago, she had first begun to notice small lapses in her memory. But those were simply natural signs of aging, and the doctor's diagnosis had been nowhere near a serious case of dementia. However, she had calmly watched as that slight decline became the trigger for my parents and Samantha to gradually and then blatantly change their attitudes toward her. They started treating her as a burden, trying to push all responsibility for her care onto me alone. And even in such a situation, I carried it all silently, without a single word of complaint. They were completely taking advantage of your kindness. They were exploiting your time and your life without giving anything in return. I couldn't forgive them for that. That was when my grandmother made her decision. She chose to pretend to be a severe dementia patient. She wanted to see, with her own eyes, the true nature of her family, right to the very end. And when the time came for me to finally break free from this house, she vowed she would give me the push I needed with her own hands. You had already taken flight into the wide-open sky with the wings of knowledge I entrusted to you. But this house, this family, had become nothing more than chains dragging you down to the ground. A single tear slid down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of regret. It was a tear filled with deep love and pride for me. You did well with the Hawaii situation. Yes, she had known everything. She knew I was a CEO. She knew about the company. Using the tablet I had quietly left in her room, she had read every company press release, every economic magazine interview, every article. While I slept, she kept up with the world. I have preparations of my own, she said softly. Then she reached into the pocket of her wheelchair and pulled out a single envelope. These are documents from my lawyer. All of my assets, the inheritance your grandfather left me, the one your parents and Samantha would give anything to get their hands on. I've already completed the process to transfer everything to you. Grandma, you don't have to. It's all right. And this house as well. Don't forget, this was originally my house, left to me by your grandfather. They never had any right to live here in the first place. Her voice was quiet but steady and unwavering. While you were suffering in this house, I was fighting behind the scenes. Through my lawyer, I've been secretly moving forward with the process of selling the house. By now, the buyer should almost be decided. I was speechless. I had believed I was the only one who had been quietly preparing for this day, but all along she had been doing the very same. In that very same house where I had endured years of my family's cruelty, my grandmother had also been quietly, steadily fighting her own battle for our future. I've decided to move into a luxury senior residence, she said gently. I don't have to tiptoe around anyone anymore. She reached out and softly touched my cheek. Let's start a new life together, Lily. A life where we live for ourselves, without anyone standing in our way. Her words were like magic, dissolving the thorn that had been embedded in my heart for so many years. I held her hand tightly and nodded again and again. Tears streamed down my face. Not tears of sadness or anger, but warm tears of liberation and hope for the future. 1 month has passed since the events in Hawaii. I quietly left that old house behind, and now I've started a new life in a penthouse in a Manhattan high-rise. Once a week, I visit my grandmother at her senior residence, and we spend peaceful, unhurried time together. As for what happened to my family after they were stranded in Hawaii, they apparently swallowed their pride and began frantically calling relatives all over the world. We were robbed in Hawaii. They stole our wallets and passports. They spun a transparent lie, one that was bound to unravel, and managed to scrape together enough money through small wire transfers to buy one-way economy tickets home. When they finally returned, neither my grandmother nor I were there to greet them. All that awaited them on the dining table were legal documents from my grandmother's lawyer. They discovered that the entire inheritance had been transferred to me, and that the house, still under my grandmother's name, was already in the process of being sold by her own will. Learning that the home they had lived in for so many years had never truly belonged to them must have been the final crushing blow. For years, my parents and Samantha had lived in my grandmother's house without paying rent, indulging in a comfortable lifestyle funded by my income. Naturally, they had no savings to fall back on. Evicted from their so-called safe haven, they were forced to rent a small suburban apartment with what little money they had left. And as expected, the "we were robbed" lie quickly unraveled. An uncle, concerned, reached out to me to confirm the story. That was when everything came to light. In response, I sent him a single email. No emotional language, just facts. Attached were screenshots of the full payment records for the trip I had fronted, the airline's booking history showing how my father had deliberately unchecked only my name, and a clear timeline of the entire series of events. I shared only the facts, attaching digital copies of receipts as evidence, and kept the email brief and to the point. My uncle was furious when he read it. The email quickly spread among all the relatives who had lent my family money. Once they saw the truth, the relatives collectively demanded immediate repayment of every cent they had sent. As a result, my parents and Samantha were completely cut off and isolated from the entire family network. They had lost their home, and now the crushing weight of repaying those family debts loomed over them as well. My mother was forced to start working part-time at a nearby supermarket. Samantha, unable to afford the expensive tuition, had no choice but to withdraw from university. She had been spoiled all her life, never learning any real skills, and now she was thrown unceremoniously into the harsh currents of society with no qualifications to her name. I heard she hurried to start job hunting, but her oversized pride only made it harder to find work. She's been struggling ever since. They never reached out to me again. Perhaps their pride wouldn't allow it. Or maybe they finally realized the magnitude of their own mistakes. I don't pity them. I don't hate them either. All I feel is a calm, quiet sense of liberation. They will live their lives, and I will live mine. Our paths will never cross again.